Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
So my question is, how do we deal with the fear of the real?
Of the
fear of the real.
Subhanallah.
Because that would normally be the first thing that we have to go through. So what's the real?
Yeah. Ajib. The fear of the real. They have a spiritual principle. They say in order to fear something or to love something, you have to know what it is. Like, because now they just fear Allah. I don't know Allah. How can I fear something I don't know? And how can I love something I don't know? So the real, if we take it as, I'd say that's really probably an accurate way of saying what sidq is in our tradition. Sidq. Because if you say, like, for example, take me back to when I was about 14, 15, 16. If you say, like, you need to have sincerity, what does that mean? Really? We need to explore these terms because they're not real, they don't resonate. Sincerity, what does that even mean? What does it mean to be sincere? Anyone? It means ikhlas. Okay, Taman, that's just a loose translation, but it takes us back to square one. And we need to really, in order to maintain any kind of truth to our tradition, we have to look carefully in terms of the language. I like one of the things in Malay, that you just like take wholesale certain Arab words. And that happens a lot if you look in terms of Swahili culture on the East Coast. And I don't think that's a weakness. I think that's actually a sign of strength. Because it says, no, the most authentic way of representing this reality, we're actually going to take it wholesale because this is the way the Prophet ﷺ himself uttered it. I think that's very real. Yeah. Like mahabba. Who knows what mahabba means? Do you have that word in Malay? No? Yeah? Mahabba. You don't really use it. It's like an old-fashioned word, probably. Yeah. Thanks, England. They probably had a good, they probably, because they're all English words now. So how do you say, like, mahabba means love. But an interesting word for mahabba is it's related to the word hub. So over 9 words in the Arabic language for love, and they express different forms and expressions of love. And then related semantically is hab. Hab is a seed. So even semantically, like linguistically within the language, you have this entire concept that love is something that has to be planted in fertile ground. And it has to be tended to, and it has to be nurtured, it has to be watered, it has to be pruned. It's not just love, that, seeking love. They have these things on these websites now. Like, what are you even talking about? What an abuse of the word, So, the fear of the real. The real, I'd say really, like, for me, that's al-haq. That's one of the names of Allah. And I like there's another translation of an American scholar of Persian, and also he speaks Arabic. He spent time with the Sufis in kind of pre-Taliban Afghanistan. And he says what does he say? The authentic. The authentic. As a translation for the real, like Allah, the ultimately, absolutely authentic. That which is completely real. And if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, the human desire for the authentic, really it's the human desire to know Allah. That's what that feeling is. And that's why we're more concerned, because no one buys Gucci or Versace, but it's just an obvious brand. Like, no one wants fake Gucci or Versace, like Gucci. It's like, come on, man. Yeah, why are we laughing? Like, if you went to a traditional culture, they'd be like, what's the problem? Just a different in the way, the thing on the label. But we're laughing because we're like, yeah, cool, Gucci, what are you talking about? Versace or something. But it shows our modern condition, where we're at, and how we kind of, we looked at one of the symptoms of modernity is we see as everything. There's this idea or this concept which is spread subliminally that everything that went before modernity, which is constantly changing, is somehow backwards. But the opposite to modernity is not backwardness, it's tradition. And tradition in our tradition is honored. because it's tradition for a reason, and it's rich, and it's colorful, and it's pluralistic, and it's universal, and it's enticing. Fear of the real. Fear is a reality in our tradition. Just because people are going to the other extreme and everything is about fear, doesn't mean we don't have fear. Like if you truly love someone, there's a fear which is affiliated with that love. If you don't have pain, you can't really have love. And the people that experience love the most have the most pain. The prophets, they were the greatest lovers. They articulated the very meaning of love, and they loved Allah in a way that we have no means to articulate or even understand. But as the Prophet ﷺ said, the most tested of people are the prophets. Taman. So by implication, they also have the deepest love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there has to be a balance. And sometimes if a person's approach to Allah is constantly through fear gives like a sobriety. It sobers you up. And we all need a bit of a wake-up call every now and again for anything. If you want to achieve anything, it's like, look, the exams in a week. And you're like, I better get revising. It's like that. The same with the deen. When we hear about Yawm al-Qiyamah and those it's to kind of put you in check. It's to wake you up. It's not to put you off. And I think, just in closure, one of the nicest things I've heard about that is that balance should be like the wings of a bird. You have fear, which is an authentic fear, a fear of losing the gaze of the one you're trying to seek, and love. And if those two aren't balanced, you have a very severe dissension and plummeting. And I think that explains for much of the depression in the Muslim community. People are really suffering and dealing with genuine forms of sadness, and it can't just be cast away. These are deep things within kind of the psychological level, but also coming from a spiritual root. And if we don't deal with the roots, then the fruit will soon go rotten. That's happening as an ummah because we're just kind of casting it aside. So I think to be people of hope, there's a lot of fear. People say the izz of the Muslims. Most non-Muslims already have a kind of a fear of Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ was never seen except he was smiling. Al-mu'minu hayyinun layyinun. The believer is easygoing and relaxed, and that's the way of the believer, not uptight and stiff and false and fake. Typically that's somebody that's not dealt with their own ego, because they're more worried about how they project themselves towards other people than in actually having a genuine human interaction for the sake of seeking the pleasure of Allah. The Sahaba weren't awkward people. They were very real, natural. They were the best people to be around. That's why everyone around the Prophet thought that they were the most beloved unto him. Like, what does that mean? That's a hard thing to do, because the Sahaba were like almost 200,000 individuals. And everyone that met him and came into his presence was just like, they felt, to one of the extent, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, radiallahu anhu, he actually came to the Prophet, he said, Ya Rasulullah, who's the most beloved person to you? Yeah, because it was one of those kind of things. And he said, the Prophet said, he's so gracious. He said, Aisha. And he was kind of... And then it was kind of like, وَمِنَ الرِّجَالِ. What about the men, Ya Rasulullah? Okay, Aisha, there's still some leeway. What about the men? He said, وَمِنَ الرِّجَالِ أَبُوهَا. In terms of the men, her father, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He said, I wish I never asked the question. And just ignorant. That's one of those moments, and ignorance is bliss. So he gave hope. This is a deen of hope. And the fear is really that we lose hope. And that's really, if we're talking about the basin, the whole, this great pool, of the Prophet ﷺ, and that's where we'll find him in Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's one of the kind of the places in which he said he will be, and that's really what it's about, because closest to him is safety. That's what we need to kind of attach ourselves to. That's a place of hope, and it's a controlled hope. It's a hope which is based in principle and rooted in the real. But inherently, for that reason, it has to be harmonious. We need to be conduits of hope. And people say, well, I can't change the world. That's the whole point, and that's the difficulty we have now. Like, People, you wake up in the morning and go on the news feed and it's just like, where's the hope? Turn it off, because there's hope all around. Like tonight is a night of hope. Because you weren't forced to be here unless Taman's not telling me something. You've all been enticed by the coffee. I know, that's why I'm here also. But it's also to exchange. It's because we want to encourage each other and be sources of support and light and illumination. This is a real tradition. It has not died. Seek out the people which embody it. It's real and it's still transforming people. It didn't die. It's not this kind of like museum piece, this relic of some ancient spiritual path that kind of decayed some centuries ago. It's real. And it's real to you, every single one of us, you know. So approach it with hope and use the fear, you know, accordingly. It is a means of motivation, inshallah.